We're on to the third item in the name of Senator Lynn Boylan, the need for the Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine to make a statement on his views on the Cypriot proposal for an EU-wide positive list system to regulate exotic pet trade in advance of the European Council Agri-Fish meeting on 24th of May. Senator Boylan.
Thank you, Lasca Herlick, agus Fáilte an Ára. Minister, look, I'm here this morning to seek the Government's position ahead of the next week's European Council meeting. I would like to hear very clearly from yourself, on behalf of Minister McConalogue, what the Government are proposing to do to regulate exotic pets in this country. Currently, Ireland has a completely lax system when it comes to exotic animals, and I'm often in this House raising concerns about dogs and their treatment, or horses, but at least with dogs we have microchipping and licensing laws, albeit that they're poorly enforced. When it comes to exotic animals, there are no such regulations, and only a few weeks ago we heard from the Exotic Animal Sanctuary that they are inundated with calls from people who are now looking to rehome their pandemic parrots. We also see news reports of reptiles being found abandoned or living in our watercourses, and there's literally nothing stopping people from buying exotic animals, animals that have complex needs and in many cases are exceptionally long-lived and far longer lived than cats and dogs. And according to the Federation of Veterinarians of Europe, through their daily interactions with exotic species, they have said that it is very, very clear that many species are not suitable as companion animals. They experience extreme stress, boredom and depression and severe behavioural issues, including self-mutilation. And irresponsible breeding, which is happening, has seen animals taken from the wild to feed the captive breeding industry. And while I know Ireland is a signatory to the Convention of International Trade in Endangered Species, the evidence is there to show that the exotic pet industry is having an impact on wild animal populations. And it's also having an impact here at home on our biodiversity, because species can become invasive. So, Minister, Ireland needs to get a handle on the exotic pet industry. We need to look around at what other countries are doing and see how effective their regulations are and introduce what is most effective. I know, for example, in the north there is a licensing system. In Britain they've introduced a certification process to ensure that potential owners have at least completed a course to show that they know how to look after the exotic species. But I particularly today want to focus on that Cypriot proposal, which I do think has a lot of merit to it, and I want to hear what the Department of Agriculture's view is on that proposal, because what Cyprus are proposing is to introduce an EU-wide positive list system for companion animals. And we know that Belgium introduced such a list in 2001, and it is clearly being very effective in Belgium. And proponents of the positive list are arguing that it provides clarity, it's a simpler process, it's better than a negative list, as it avoids the situation whereby if an animal is not listed, it is therefore then permitted by default. Positive lists are a precautionary approach, and they're more effective against the new unforeseen trends that we might have in various exotic species. So, Minister, can you outline what Ireland's position is at the Agri-Fish Council meeting on the 24th of May, and if it isn't to support the Cypriot proposal, which is backed already by Lithuania, by Malta and by Luxembourg, what is the Minister proposing instead to address the issue in Ireland? Because we cannot continue with business as usual when it comes to exotic species in this country. And if I can get a copy of the Minister's speech, great.
The copies there. And I'd like to thank Senator Boylan for raising this matter here today. At the upcoming European Agri-Fish Council meeting, the Cypriot delegation will share the information with ministers regarding the establishment of a new legislative framework for an EU positive list for the keeping of companion animals, as you've outlined. Officials in my department are awaiting the detailed wording of the proposal of the Cypriot government, and Minister McConalogue will consider this carefully in advance of the meeting on May 24th. Separately, in reflecting societal concerns about the keeping, breeding and trading of exotic animal species, officials in the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine have been asked to take the lead in establishing an independently chaired interdepartmental group to ensure a coherent national approach to policy and regulation related to exotic animals. This reflects the fact that such matters involve a number of government departments, and you've outlined here, Senator, the concern that you have, that I understand about how in relation to exotic animals, the situation can be evolving, the impact that they can have. Obviously affects more than just in the area of agriculture. It can have a much broader reach and impact, so it's important that all stakeholders and all government departments are engaged in that process, and that's what we're doing with that interdepartmental group. And this is very much in line with the programme for government and Ireland's Animal Welfare Strategy 2021 to 2025, working together for animal welfare. Initial meetings of the group have taken place, and its work will focus on regulating the keeping, breeding and trading of exotic animals. All aspects of these areas and models for best practice will be considered by the group in developing new regulations. But in relation to the Cypriot proposal, we're waiting for the detailed wording exactly of that proposal, and we will give that very due consideration, and Minister McConalogue will work on that before the meeting on the 24th of May to see exactly the implications of moving to a positive list as opposed to a negative list. And obviously in any regulations like that, you also want to check and see that there aren't any unintended consequences as to how that would affect other species, and all of these things need to be considered when we have that final detailed wording of the proposal from the Cypriots.
Margaret. Senator Boylan.
Thank you, Minister, for your response. I'm wondering, is it this proposal that you're still awaiting, because it is available, the Cypriot proposal? But what I would say is, if we're worried about unintended consequences, I think the unintended consequences come with a negative list, because a negative list has to be exhaustive, whereas a positive list clearly sets out what you are permitted to keep. We know that venomous snakes are being bred in Ireland. There are public health impacts related to exotic species. I know, for example, one sable was found in the country that was carrying a rabies-type virus. So while I appreciate that there is, as part of the programme for government, a look at animal welfare legislation, I would encourage you to listen very carefully to what the Cypriots are proposing, to give it due consideration. But even if you can't bring yourself to support that proposal, I would call on interim measures to be introduced, because we are seeing very significant animal welfare issues around exotic species. People who don't know how to look after these animals, people who are taking animals that can live for up to 80 years, and they're not going to be around to look after them. So I would encourage you, at the bare minimum, to introduce some sort of interim regulations to deal with this.
Thank you. Look, my department has a proud history in terms of supporting the welfare of animals, whether through policy initiatives, the provision of advice or guidance, or through financial assistance to farmers to help them improve their facilities, or financial supports to animal welfare charities. Last year we launched Ireland's first overarching animal welfare strategy, reflecting this government's clear commitment to animal welfare. The strategy is backed by resources and expertise within the department, and involves dialogue and cooperation with other government departments and agencies, with stakeholders and with civil society. We have strong protections for animal welfare here in Ireland. The Animal Health and Welfare Act of 2013 provides a regulatory framework for welfare, and this framework seeks to ensure that animals are kept in such a way that their welfare is provided for. We are also fully engaged in CITES, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, which covers endangered exotic animals, as you outlined, Senator. It covers over 4,000 species of animals and 25,000 plant species. And its aim is to ensure that international trade in specimens of wild animals and plants does not threaten their survival in the wild, and is sustainable, legal and traceable. The competent authority here in Ireland with responsibility for cities is the National Parks and Wildlife Service, acting as the management authority which controls, permits and certifies for species covered by cities, while my department regulates the health status of animals entering Ireland. As I've outlined already, my department is leading an interdepartmental group on exotic animals to advise on policy and regulation, and I would ask that you, Senator, are made aware of any developments arising from its work following the meeting of the European Agfish meeting next week. Thank you.